And they're allowed to have an amount of marijuana on site that is not limited, per se. There's no number that anyone at Lara during these emergency rules would say is an amount that is too much. And the irony of all this is just a simple question: how do they get it? You're allowed to have it. There's no licensed growers that are producing for the market, but where are they getting it from?
It's a cannabis berry.
It's a cannabis berry.
That's right.
It's called the Immaculate Cannabisception.
Immaculate cultivation.
Immaculate
cultivation.
Immaculate cultivation. So, there it is. It's there. I can sell it. Wow, what do you know? Miracle. So, and it's rather laughable, right? Because there's people that during this period of time over the last year plus are getting arrested, having too much marijuana. Mm-hmm. States taking up to $60,000 and regulatory fees and application fees in the $20,000. People are that deep into it, and they're saying, "Yep, go ahead. You can, until you're either denied by the board." All right. So what happens is Lara, who has been, and the only point I'm trying to make is that initially here is that Lara, and I never really thought it would ever happen, but they've created this situation that was very more ambiguous than could ever possibly be. In terms of what is legal and not, what's protected and not protected by utilizing the emergency rules. I say from a legal perspective, you operate in that frame, it's going to be with a lot of risk and a lot of potential liability. Have we defended it and been successful because it's totally, creates a lot of representations and beliefs and reliance on government representations that somehow an individual is going to be free from prosecution and forfeiture. And there's no question that is what the intention is here. And that the emergency rules in the state of being in an emergency, that they apply and apply across the state. So what is interesting about all this is that the idea here with this regulatory scheme of the MMFLA is that they clearly, when it was passed, did not want caregivers to be supplying the system. If there's ever a question of whether caregivers in the MMA were intended to be part of the retail and selling, the enactment of the MMFLA, not that is an altruistic means by which we should receive information, but the enactment of that would say to us that the caregivers are for their patients and they should have no more than 5. And if there's going to be any financial or retail or business side of growing marijuana, it's going to be if you get a license through the state and only through those mechanisms. And if you're going to do that, we're going to you're going to have to pay a lot of money and license and oversight and comply in order to stay in position. Now, and that's the way the legislature has rolled it out. And in a way, they've not in a way. They've made the statement that whomever it was that's been supplying the patients all the 8 years, this is what we say to you: screw off. We don't need you anymore. Thanks for coming out. Now we're going to pass the buck to somebody else, and you get nothing. Now, point of history: 2014, the medical marijuana and cannabis community came together, rare, whenever, and signed off on a principal legislation that would include retail outlets that were supplied exclusively from the existing caregiver system, with the details to be worked out later. Never got to the vote in the lame duck session, but that was something that people could agree upon. So, fast forward now to what's today, November 29th. So, Lara had been operating under the emergency rules and with the intention all along of, just for the purposes of the emergency situation and making sure patients could get their cannabis, turned their head, did not care, did not, concern themselves with however retail centers were getting cannabis and let them operate and claim that they weren't going to judge and it wasn't going to affect the person's ability to get a license. And some rules have been, some attempts by Lara and the board to end this quote-unquote madness of totally unregulated marijuana activity where anyone can have as much marijuana as they want on site and no one knows where it's coming from, by putting some deadlines on when this, total random rule kind of situation just would end. And there's been litigation in the Court of Claims trying to enjoin that behavior, since now that everyone's gotten used to this way by which patients are getting their cannabis. And if you were to pull this random rule situation that everyone's living under, which is no guidance, and you can have as much marijuana as you want, and the dispensary is for those that are operating, and where it comes from nobody knows. But at some point we're going to make you get into the system so we know everything that's going on, and it just continues to go on. So there's been deadlines and extensions, and the last edict by the board was that they were going to require that any of the marijuana that after people had been licensed, and they had to dispose of it within 30 days if it wasn't from the system, and just some really outrageous things that are going on. So if that was going to happen, the story went like this: that if there's no marijuana on the shelves of any of these existing licensed places that are open, where are they going to get it from? Well, there's a couple licensed growers that have been able to harvest. Now, I'm not going to say that I know and understand the exactness of the numbers of the purchasing and selling of cannabis. Several clients who will tell me at various times what that number may be. But I understand that the price on the state market, Deb, do you know what this is?
Yes. I'm hearing that the prices are ranging about $4,000 a pound.
$5,000, I heard. $5,000. Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't.
A pound, which is more than double.
More than double. Right.
Way more than double.
Right. So, and there you go. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
How can you?
And that, Michael, is wholesale pricing.
I understand.
That's before, and traditionally
Retail
is double what the wholesale
There you
price
go.
is. So I don't know how patients would possibly afford this.
What does that break down to an ounce? What are you talking? 600,
Oh
500?
my God, more than that.
No, not the double, but on the wholesale, how much is an ounce? 5,000, 4,000, 4,000 was 16.
Yeah, it's like
Four something an ounce.
I'm not a math in my head person. Let me see.
Math, Jeff. Nobody? All right. So the point, I don't know.
5,000 divided by 16 is $3.12 an ounce wholesale.
Here you go. So
It's going to be 600.
So right. So that's what I was getting at. Who's going to want to pay that when they're accustomed?
Outrageous.
Now there are. Listen, I will say this for purposes of
And why is the grower charging this much? And if I was a dispensary person or somebody owning a dispensary, I would not deal with this grower later on down the line, because this is gouging.
Of course.
Plus tax.
But
Plus
what is
taxes, right? Yeah, plus tax.
and 280E taxes right, for the retailer? How so they're. But let me ask this: what is to prevent the caregivers from holding back? What if they said, "Here you go"? If they're the only ones that you can buy cannabis from, and they're saying 5 right now, and they say, "Guess what? This is what we're doing. We're going to hold back to the next." Till we get some more cannabis in, and this is all that's available in the market. Start bidding on it. Start bidding on it.
That's right, market price, and things could go crazy, especially if you have unscrupulous caregivers. I don't personally know anybody who would do that, but there are people who would do this.
Well, you're not.
This is human nature.
This isn't caregiving we're talking about. This is the
The big
random
growers.
rules of the MMFLA. And I'm saying
I thought you were saying that since the wholesale market, the legal wholesale market is so high, that the caregiver market is going to increase also.
Well,
Because people get greedy.
Sure. No, I understand what you're saying. Right, and if they well, if that's what they're getting, if they're getting 5 now, I'm going to get
instead of the 2, I'm going to get 3, and it's still going to be a bargain.
Right, I'm not. I understand that, and I don't dispute that things like that could potentially happen. But the point I'm trying to get is, where we are. They want to get rid of the caregivers. They've been trying to, even though they're relying on them, and they've got to get rid of the marijuana. Got to buy the $5,000 a pound. And then this last week, it's not a rule. It's not an official law, but they're recommending to the board that for the first time, caregivers be allowed to sell their overages.
No, that's not what it says. It says they can buy it. It says the dispensaries can buy it, but it does not say the caregivers can sell
they
it.
Can buy. I understand that.
So,
but it's okay. But what are we talking? I mean, I'm a lawyer. I can play with words all day long. And words are important. Words have meaning. But
never in that document does it say caregivers.
And he makes
can.
the point of saying that. And I commented in an article and said, I don't care.
I know
because what. Let's not be stupid, okay? Let's just be honest of what we're talking about. And in my comments,
read your quote.
I don't know. I like the fact that she. Okay.
Let's hear your quote.
I'm very. I don't like this number. I'm very proud of my quote.
It's an awesome quote. That's why I said read it.
I don't
A
think
lot-
I've read it.
A lot
See?
of times I'm misquoting.
Ellie needs to hear it. Read
A lot
it.
of times I say stuff they don't include, or they say like they use it in like the backstory. I see a lot of Colton in here. Hold on.
I'm sure he was just paraphrasing what he heard you say earlier anyway.
You didn't go through the channels to talk to the press, but it's fine. We'll let it pass. All right, so Michael Kamor said, he said caregivers of clients who have felony criminal cases pending for possession with intent to deliver. Let me see here.
That's not it.
I know. Hold on. I have had many cases over the last 8 years that alleged felony marijuana crimes for behavior that Lara just codified as part of their system, Kamor said. The takeaway it would suggest is that it has been realized now by the state that they need caregivers for the state's medical marijuana program to work. They may not want to admit it, but this last play by Lara seals it.
That's right.
I mean, in other words,
Caregivers have been fueling the supply since day one. Well, even before the dispensary bills were passed, when dispensaries are supposed to be illegal, where did they think that this was coming from? They thought that we're supposed to be standing in an alley buying our medicine? I mean, come on.
Apparently.
you know, and I know that Andrew Brisboe wanted to be clear. Let me read his quote, because let me back up, because and I don't want what I said here in my quote to be taken as legal advice. It certainly is not. What I was suggesting is more of a principled analysis of what's taking place, and you had to understand all the nonsense I said before I got to this point, but in the history of it. But Andrew says this is not Andrew Brisboe of the he's the head of the MMFLA regulatory wing. It's not an authorization for anything outside of what it is an agreement to not take license action for certain activities. So that means that they're not going to punish the license applicants who are now purchasing marijuana from a method that they've criminalized. And I know, but let's talk more detail about what's involved here. What's required of the caregiver? Are they going through the back channel and not making a record and not keeping a record because the lawyer told them don't make a record and don't pay taxes? Are they doing
What lawyer
anything?
told them to do that? No, don't make a record.
I'm saying, I mean, let me ask this question. What lawyer is telling people to report that behavior
To report that their client is involved in illegal activity?
Yeah.
Nobody.
Okay, then I'm saying now they've created a mechanism where the quote-unquote overage program can be done. They've actually created a methodology. Am I mistaken about this? That there's got to be tested?
No, I understand that you found a defense in there, but they still have not stated that the caregiver can do this.
Well, what?
I get what you're saying, Michael. I get what you're
They
saying.
don't say
Where is it coming from? But
I know
a
that.
disclaimer
Okay, I don't
says-
care what he says. He also said CBD can only be purchased through the regulatory system.
I know.
All right? I'm not suggesting anyone go out and purchase, or sell marijuana, cannabis or CBD outside of the system. But I mean, I'll take that case. Let's go. I mean, I don't think it's I don't think he's got the authority to do that. But nevertheless, but this is different. This is something that, on the challenge of whether or not this suffices as something more than, as he says, than just a agreement. It's an agreement to not take licensing action for certain activities. That's fine. But the idea that
Does that say they're just saying we're not going to we're not going to take
we're not going to deny your license.
Right.
If
That
you're-
doesn't mean that makes it okay. It doesn't mean that they're saying that it's legal now for caregivers to do this. It's just saying we're not going to penalize the business owners. I bet you they snap ass on the caregivers.
They very well may. And I would say if that occurs, I don't know that this says certain behavior will not penalize certain individuals who are applying for licenses.
That's all it says.
But it certainly doesn't say, and we're going to beat the crap out of caregivers.
No, but it doesn't say that now we're changing and the caregivers can sell beyond their 6 patients. It doesn't say that.
Can you think of any other law that might have some kind of asymmetrical protection? What the hell is an asymmetrical? I'm just kidding. Isn't that the it's McQueen? You can. So let's see how that would work.
I
Right,
have
it's just
total
like-
confidence
it's just
that
the way
you
it
will
is.
save my
No,
ass if something
this
comes
is-
down. I just don't want to have to go through that.
I understand,
You
but
know?
it's almost as if it's the same analogy to Like the personal right of a patient in McQueen, no one in St. Clair County